East German leaders, including Stolpe, including de Maizière, including Kati Witt. You know who Kati Witt is? You know, won some Olympic gold medals in ice skating and so on. I mean, anybody that at East Germany was proud of, not anybody, but almost. I mean, a great number of them were found out to have worked for the Stasi. And that is shattering for your self-confidence. And of course, the West used it because you can sell newspapers. And it makes good copy of the evening news. And you can say, the mayor of Detroit has been found out to, he hasn't. The mayor of Detroit has his own problems. Okay, so you know, the question of Vergangenheitsbewältigung has been one of the difficult ones. I still think in comparison to other East European countries, what was done was basically better, the Enquete-Kommission and so on. Confronting the dirty past is, I think, part of the healing process in the long run. In the short run, it hurts like heck. But in the long run, it gets the stuff out in the open. And you know, it allows you to move on beyond it. And of course, learning democracy is also not easy because you have to learn how to be in political parties, and party meetings are boring. And, you know, it's always the same music parties and whatever, and so on. So this has been hard because the euphoria of the mass mobilization, of the grassroots movement, of the fall of 89 and so on, dissipated relatively quickly in economic difficulties and so on. And so you had a kind of post-revolutionary depression. Now, what can we say in conclusion about all of this? I would maintain that this is the most important event in Europe since 1945. Okay. Have any disagreement on that? Then tell me in the discussion. Secondly, it's a new kind of civic revolution that starts transnationally because you can't just explain it in the national context. It's a block phenomenon in which the Poles begin with Solidarność, Deutschland, Hungary, and then it gets the Germans involved. And then it goes from East Berlin to Prague, which is difficult for Czechs to allow that that's the sequence and so on, but it's okay. You know. Secondly, it's peaceful, you know, and then thirdly, in the German case, it leads into unification, which of course is what makes this analytically difficult. Because when you talk about it as a unification process, and you ask the wrong question, you know, the Germans are always asking, are we united yet? You know, could we be more united? You know, how united is united? You know, ask Manchester. Too much soccer tonight. You know, the point is just that it's a criterion issue, and it's not the right one. The question is, what are the changes? And the changes, in my mind, are revolutionary. You're replacing a complete system, you know, with its government structures, with its economy from plant to market, with its society back to civil society, and so on, you know, and the culture, from a guided culture, you know, to Western, pop and various other kinds of cultures and and stuff like this. And of course, it has created a post-Cold War world order that has been more disorderly than the Syria Bush wanted, and therefore, of course, the picture of the Lenin statue was a must. And if you think you're done, I have one little surprise for you at the end, which is a graffito that says, "Die DDR hat's nie gegeben, the DDR never existed," which is, of course, belied by the rundown piece of wall that it's written on and the destruction around the Berliner Dome. It shows you a little bit of the task for memory and history that we have to confront. What was all of this about? I hope you have a little bit more understanding of it. Thank you.
Now, it goes without saying that there's time to entertain questions, so please give Professor Jarusch a chance to take a sip of water, and then...
Oh, go ahead. You can ask. I can listen.
I want to take debate for a second. I think it's not an event at all. Will be my argument. It's actually my argument to make my paper tomorrow. But first of all, I want to say it's wonderful. I mean, the way you assembled the details was incredibly persuasive, and the way you characterized it as a revolution. But what I want to do is just throw at you, especially since you're not going to be here tomorrow, so in a way I'm anticipating some other things I'll say, but throw at you a counter definition of a revolution. So not in terms of a quantity of consequences, but saying being grabbed by an idea. So if we were to speak of the unity of a revolution, its eventual characteristic would be that it has an idea that's grabbing it. And in this case, it seems like that didn't apply. It was, you mentioned the National Forum, which is very much a 19th century, if not earlier forum. When you mentioned the failure of organized forum of various, not failure, but they weren't cadre parties, but unlike 68, they didn't reflect on how do we create another party form, another sort of transmission belt between populace and power. So there was a lack there. And then outside of Germany, you didn't have this national forum, but you had the emphasis on NATO and Westbindung, and especially Poland's role in the event. And when I contrast that even to Gorbachev's attempts to speak to the Euro-socialists traveling around before everything fell apart on him, to try and create maybe some sort of international alternative there. And even LaFontaine, I would just grab people. I mean, at least he risked the populism. I mean, he failed at the moment. But I think he argued the only chance for an idea to seize people in a revolutionary way would be through a populism. And so in a way, LaFontaine, despite his failure, I mean, he risked a populism that was never any place to be seen out of his Germany. So yes, I totally agree with you in terms of number of consequences. But the way I would get around that, and it's not a question so much, it's just a challenge up there in person. But say, it was the end of a big event. And of course, when an event ends, it has enormous consequences. It was the end of the event of communism. But it wasn't an event of its own, or it wasn't a revolution of its own. So that's my challenge.
Okay, well, I fundamentally disagree.
All right.
We do, because one of the alternatives is collapse. Okay, and collapse is a kind of perspective from the top down, system collapse. And my sense is, and so does Carbon Ashes, that of some other people, is that the communists didn't leave because they got tired of it, but because they were forced out. And they were forced out by whom? By the demonstrations, by the people. And that is the definition of a revolution.
A different one, but true.
Yeah, sure. I mean,